today, in this recipe, I will be making a simple Mexican rice, and although one could also call this specific rendition a Spanish rice, I usually just call it a Mexican rice. Hello, my name is Ben. Welcome to my channel where I'm trying to master the art of living, unbelievably. Mexican tomato rice. Made with a few ingredients, a Mexican rice like this can be incorporated into any Mexican feast in many different ways, or it can even simply be enjoyed by itself. So, I'll be using 2 cups of chicken stock, which I've just happened to have made in another video, 1 cup of cheap long grain rice, 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. Now I know this is Italian tomato paste, but it's opened and I'm not letting it go to waste. The herbs in this paste won't jeopardize the Mexicanness of the rice. I'll also be using half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, half a teaspoon of ground cumin, 2 garlic cloves and a small onion. So there are a great many ways one could variate this version of Mexican rice, depending on what you have on hand. All of these changes will affect the flavour of the dish, a flavour that is going to be tweaked for your own liking, for your own budget, for your own restraints. So you could use different types of stocks, even ones made from stock cubes or even just plain boring old water by itself. You could add salt and or pepper. You could also use different combinations of Mexican herbs and spices. You could get the tomato flavour from some passata or even some fresh tomatoes, or you could go more or less garlic or onions, or none, or a different allium altogether, or a different combination of alliums. But what you really can't do is change the ratio of liquid to rice. Unless you're using a different rice that calls for a different ratio, then you do want to adjust the ratio. But if you're using cheap long grain rice, you can just not worry about any of that and keep following along. I'm going to prepare the ingredients now. I'm going to peel the onion and peel the garlic, chop the onion into quarters and then slice them into quarter rings. Then I'm going to finely grate the garlic. Now notice that the garlic has some green on the tips. This is just an older garlic that almost wants to start growing some leaves. It is perfectly okay to eat. You could slice it or dice it. Use minced garlic fresh or from a jar, whatever suits you. I'm going to get any pot with a lid large enough to fit all the ingredients without spilling. Get it heating up on a medium-high heat. I'm going to add some oil, maybe a couple of tablespoons, and I'm going to add a cup of rice. And I'm going to get the rice all coated with the oil because we want to toast that rice to help develop the flavour that little bit more. So I want it sizzling here. If you can't hear it sizzling, you might need to wait for it to heat up a bit more, or you may need to turn up your cooktop. But I want to hear it sizzling. I want to hear it toasting, and I'm going to stay here with the rice, giving it a stir every 45 seconds or so until it starts to brown. Then I'm going to add the onions. Let them cook for another minute or so, do a bit more of a stir, add the garlic, stir that in and let it all cook for another minute or so to give the flavour of the garlic a chance to activate. Then I'm going to first turn the cooktop down to a medium-low heat. I'm going to add the 2 cups of chicken stock, which I already have heated. I'm adding half a teaspoon of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. I know the recipe is only for half a teaspoon, but I want this to be more paprika-y, so I'm adding the extra half a teaspoon. I'm going to wing it and eyeball 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, give it a stir, and normally you'd want to get it up to a simmer before you turn it right down and put the lid on. I already had the liquid what turned out to be way too hot. So I'm going to turn down the cooktop right now near the low setting, put the lid on and start the timer for 12 minutes. Here we are 12 minutes later and the rice looks perfect. Amazing, look at it. So now I'll just put the lid back on quickly and let it steam for the next 5 minutes or so. After which I would either serve immediately or let it sit for up to an hour or so while I finished up with the other dishes I'm usually making to serve with it. And after an hour I'd put those leftovers into the fridge, use in other dishes over the next 4 days or so. You can reheat it almost perfectly by stirring a dash of water and either microwaving it or heating it up in a saucepan on a cooktop. You could also freeze it in vacuum bags for up to 6 months, although I've never needed to do this because it's always used up in something. Burritos, tacos, a side in a fiesta, even used as a foundation for more decadent, perhaps saucy and cheesy variations. There are so many ways to use this simple rice, you'll never tire of it, especially because the recipe itself can be tweaked forever. Using proper homemade stock, it is very nutritious and can be made so cheaply. It is one of the many great foundations from which you can start to build a repertoire of different healthy and super cheap Mexican meals. That's it for now, plenty more content coming, enjoy.